Going to get started with this webinar. I am so pleased to see so many people here in our audience and this lovely group of panelists for today's discussion of sustainable timeless design. I am Susan Ingalls, a direct Sustainable Furnishings Counsel, and I'm delighted to welcome you all. I want to thank ASID Oregon for having us today. ASID Oregon was going to have us in person out there in Oregon, but instead we are coming in from all sorts of places around the country, working from the safety of our homes and bringing you this presentation in just as dynamic a fashion. I trust you'll have to let us know how you think this goes. This is a CEU presentation, and you see the CEU number on the screen, and your attendance will be reported to IDCEC. So you'll get this hour of continuing education credit. We're very pleased to have as our guest panelists today Steve Freeman and Jim Scholastico of Room and Board, Beverly McAuley of Moore and Giles, and Kathryn Richardson of Libeco. And I'm going to introduce them further in just a bit. But to start, I am going to give you an introduction to Sustainable Furnishings Council. We are a membership organization with nearly 400 member companies that are involved in residential furnishings in various ways, all of which have made their own public and verifiable commitment to sustainability and to transparency and to continuous improvement. And we support them in realizing their commitment by giving them guidance and resources, marketing support. They get to use the member seal and lots of educational resources. Green Leaders is our core educational program. So if you're interested in the sort of thing that we're discussing today, I hope you'll consider joining us for a Green Leaders class available online anytime. Sustainability, as you know, is an umbrella term, and there are many things that fall under this wide umbrella of sustainability and many ways in which the furniture industry directly relates to the range of sustainability issues. We at Sustainable Furnishings Council worry about them all and do what we can to address them as best we can with initiatives, including the What's It Made Of initiative, which is to raise awareness about the handful of harmful chemicals that are most commonly found in furnishings, and to try to stimulate innovation towards the elimination, eventually, of these handful of hazardous chemicals. We also have an initiative we call the Wood Furniture Scorecard, in which we assess retailers for their wood sourcing policies, looking at whether they have a policy, whether they're implementing it well, and whether they need any help implementing it. We are doing a lot of work with about 120 retailers this year on the Wood Furniture Scorecard. These things are important because our planet is in trouble. We are looking here at a video of weather anomalies that have occurred since early in the Industrial Revolution. You can see that in general, what is off is that the temperatures are hotter. The planet is heating up. And so it is very important that we're doing the work we're doing and that we have with us the guests we have today who are doing the work they are doing. So I'm just going to take a minute now to introduce them. And then as the rest of the slides roll through at their own pace, I am going to be talking with the panelists in a conversation, and I invite all of you in our audience to send in your questions with the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and then we will get to those questions. So our panelists include Beverly McAuley of Moore and Giles, which is a leather company. Beverly has nearly 38 years experience in the leather industry, including with recent years at Moore and Giles as Director of Education and Sustainability. She is also an ambassador presenter for the International Living Futures Institute, so brings a particular perspective on her passion for sustainability and the environment. Steve Freeman is with Room and Board and serves as the vendor resource manager there. Y'all know that Room and Board is a contemporary furniture retailer, has 18 stores across the US. Steve has been with the company for over 40 years and really has led their sustainability efforts, bringing them to where they are as a company, as a leader in sustainability, not only in our industry, but further afield. So, Room and Board is a founding member of Sustainable Furnishings Council, and Steve himself has served on our board for a long time, including as our president. And Jim has been with Room and Board not quite so long, but has been in the furniture industry just as long as any of us, and has been in retail management all the 30-odd years of his career in several states, in furnishings and in other retail arena. So we're delighted to have that strong perspective. And Jim is in Oregon, in the Room and Board store there in Portland. So I know that not all of our audience is in that area, but those who are the ones who will have the first chance to meet Jim in person, I expect. Kathryn Richardson is the Vice President of Sales for Libeco, and she too has served on the Sustainable Furnishings Council board and as president of our board. She has been in the job she's in now for 13 or so years, but she has been in this arena of working in our industry for years longer than that. And she has been in a leader in the textiles industry in various ways as well, also serving on the board of the International Textiles Alliance. So I am delighted to have you all with us today and for us to be able to have this conversation. I want to give you a chance to start by telling us more about yourself and your company and sort of framing it around what sustainability means to you. And Kathryn, I'm going to start with you because I just finished with you. So I'll start with you, please.
Well, Libeco truly feels that sustainability is part of our DNA, and dealing with a natural product, flax, which becomes the linen that you know of. Belgian linen is the product that we manufacture. We are the weavers of this textile. Means that we are constantly focused on that natural resource and the health and sustainability of that resource. And for us, it's important that we are reinforcing its longevity, instilling a passion in people to understand why its preservation is important, why using it is one of the best choices in textiles out there for the purposes of choosing a sustainable resource and not leaving a mark on the planet with carbon emissions. We went carbon neutral in 2014 as an example of the commitment that we wanted to make. And we really feel that it is an important resource to constantly look ahead and invest in to make sure that it will be there for the long term as many other resources in our planet are also under fire. Critical resources are really being depleted, and flax is certainly among those that we have to keep an eye on. So for us, the natural product that we work with is a sustainable product. So for us, making sure that we're not doing any wrong, doing any harm to the planet and to our resource for our business is critically important. For me personally, I just think sustainability is a form of balance. If there's something out of balance where you're taking too much and using too much of the resource that we need to survive, then there's something wrong. If your financial model is out of balance, something's wrong with your business. So it's the same kind of thing that we think of when we're thinking about flax and the planet that we take the resource from.
That's great. That's great. Beverly, why don't you go next and tell us your perspective? And
okay. Before I get started, I will say I suffer from one of the things many of us have suffered from with all of these Zoom meetings and electronic meetings, virtual meetings. I do not live in a place where there is a really great Wi-Fi signal. So I do apologize if this is spotty for anyone. But yes, Moore and Giles, leather in general is the original sustainable story. It's one of the original recycled products. So for us, it truly is, to Kathryn's point, it's in our DNA. You know, there are over 300 million hides of leather diverted from the landfill each year to create a durable, functional, timeless product. So, you know, if you look at it that way, it's really about, you know, our existence is about taking something away from the landfill and making something useful out of it. And it's gorgeous. So we truly enjoy what we do, and we are leaders in the industry, and we're proud of that. Working with our tanneries all over the world and working together to be more sustainable, improving chemistries, improving processes, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. But one of the things we're most proud of is our olive tanned products, which could truly turn the entire leather industry on its ear in a good way. So for me, sustainability means opportunity. It's truly an opportunity to not only create a better world environmentally, but a healthier world for our species and others.
Great. Thank you, Beverly. And Steve, why don't you speak to Room and Board's perception of sustainability, and both you and Jim should say whatever you want to about your personal perspective on sustainability too.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you for having us as part of this panel, and I appreciate everybody who's taking time out of their day to come join us. But Room Board is based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and as all of you know who live in Oregon, part of what makes Minnesota beautiful and Oregon beautiful is the environment we live in. And it's certainly part of why we're having this conversation today, is we don't want to lose that. And everybody at Room and Board feels that same way. Now, one of the things that we do that's a little different, other than, you know, primarily using solid wood as our product for a lot of our furniture, is that we really try to make a high quality product that's going to last for a long time, so it doesn't have to be replaced. It's using classic design, so it will hopefully live in a home for a long time. So it's, you know, it could be discussed as almost heirloom quality furniture that you'll want to have in your home for a long, long time and not worry about replacing it. One of the other things that we do, and I think Jim can even speak to this a little bit too, is in our stores, we really try to take buildings that have existed for a long time, and rather than dispose of those buildings and build a brand new showroom, we often take showrooms and redo them to make them look great, to help revitalize neighborhoods, to help revitalize buildings. So a lot of our retail stores are actually recycled buildings, if you will, that we have made into showrooms for the future. Room and Board obviously is a big part of Sustainable Furnishings Council. We've been there since the beginning. Susan and myself and Kathryn and others have done a lot of work in this area in a industry that for a long time had sustainability as a key part of what they do, but never really spoke to it very much. So I think that's really been good to bring to the forefront of the furniture industry and make people aware of what's going on with it. So if there's anything we can do to continue that, we will be happy to help out. And maybe I'll give Jim a couple minutes to just talk about Room and Board and sustainability from the store perspective.
Yeah.
Jim, go ahead.
Well, thank you. And as Steve mentioned, for those of you that are in Portland or in Oregon, the building that we're in, it was built in 1904. It was an old tire factory, and the entire thing's been refurbished top to bottom with energy efficiency and sustainability in mind, to the degree of replacing 400 window panes to maintain the original windows, yet bring them up to 2019 standards, 2020 standards. So for me, with the sustainability, and the reason I joined Room and Board was the way it culturally aligned with where I was at in my life. But we look at it from an end user standpoint, a consumer standpoint, and for us, it's telling that story of where that piece of furniture came from, what makes it special, why it will last them a lifetime and beyond. Consumers love to hear that story. They like hearing that it was made in West Virginia with wood that was sourced locally and created this wonderful product. And for us, the other big part of it is getting it right the first time. We spend a lot of time designing, working with customers to ensure that whatever item they choose, that's the one that's going to work, minimizing the amount of time trucks spend on the road, taking product back and forth. And so that's really where we approach it from.
That's great. That's great. And I do hear our themes of sustainability and timelessness in what y'all are saying, all of you. What is interesting in today's lineup of panelists is about the materials we have represented here. And the expertise in materials is what I mean, not that y'all are these materials yourselves, but you have the expertise in the materials. So we're going to talk more specifically about materials. Now, for any consumer product, we know that 80% of the environmental footprint of that product comes from what it's made of, what the material is. So I would like for each of you to talk about your supply chains and your relationships with your supply chain. So, and I'm going to leave it to you to say whatever you want to, but how you manage your supply chains for sustainability. And I'm going to start with you, Beverly, because one of the interesting things that you can talk to us about is the declare label. And that, and so tell us whatever you will about leather in general, which is, as you say, a recycled material. If the hide is not used to become leather, it's going to be garbage, and a fairly toxic one at that. But talk to us not only about leather in general, but specifically about the declare label, and then we're going to move on to other materials, but we're starting with leather here.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, so again, meat and dairy industries create a byproduct waste, a waste byproduct that is leather. The leather industry diverts their waste into a product that is tanned, and typically, so our supply chain would include maybe the tanneries. What we have asked of our tanneries is to be as transparent as possible with their ingredients, and we're in the process of gathering some of that data, which, as you can imagine, it can be tricky. Anytime you ask someone for their secret recipe, it's a challenge. However, they're being very forthcoming and wonderful, and partly because every one of our European tanneries or our tannery partners are required to meet REACH or be REACH compliant. So they cannot allow a chemical to come into their tannery that isn't REACH compliant. Many of our tanneries are making larger advancements and further strides toward a energy efficient, water efficient operating structure than many of our US companies are doing. So it's really impressive to look at some of the strong positions they've taken toward being, 0% coal-powered energy, utilizing less and less water and energy in their production rates through the year. So very, very excited about the things that are happening. And then ultimately, the new chemistry I talked about with the olive tanned products, it's a new way to tan leather. It's using the byproduct of the olive industry, olive trees. The fallen leaves from olive trees create the product that the leather is tanned in. And it's organic, it's water-based, it's healthy. It has received Cradle to Cradle awards. It's a phenomenal process. It has also received Declare labels, Red List Free Declare labels, which is truly a certification platform based on transparency. So you have to show down to the 100 parts per million each chemical that is in that product, specific to color and everything. So includes the dyes. And I'm proud to say that we are the first, and as far as I know, the only leather supplier in this industry with olive tanned leather and Declare labels on every one of those products.
That's great. I congratulate you on that accomplishment.
Thank
And now, Kathryn, I'd like you to talk about the linen and your supply chain.
Sure. And I just wanted to highlight too, because I know this is somewhat a common question I get, and Beverly, you probably get this too, when we talk to designers, and we're asked a lot, what labels should we look for that are important to give, authentication about the products that you're looking for in a sustainability field. And I think the Declare label sounds certainly like one of them. And another one for us is something like Oekotex, and that's OEKOTEX. And a lot of them are great labels. We have a GOTS certification label as well, with not the entire collection, but with a specific part of it. And I'll explain that in a second why. And then also a Cradle to Cradle certification, which is a fantastic certification process that you can research more and we can talk about more when we have more time, or you can look on our Sustainable Furnishings website for more information. But for us, we are an authentic Belgian linen weaver. So we're based in Belgium. We weave linen from the flax that's grown in our immediate region called Flanders. It's a little bit of Holland, a little bit of Belgium, and a little bit of France. That's where it's grown. It's right on the North Sea. And it's grown there because it's the only place that flax is indigenous to. And it means it's got the best climate and topography for this plant. So we get the tallest plants, we get the healthiest plants, typically when you're looking at growing across the globe. And it is grown in other places, but we tend to get the best yields, the best consistency in color, the best quality, etc. Coupled with the eye on artisanal manufacturing processes, which get passed down from generation to generation, we really are finding second to none quality from this region. And that's what we are about. And with sustainability in mind, we have a lot of challenges. It's a farmed product, so it's grown in fields. It takes no irrigation to grow, so the climate is right now perfect for growing. But because of global warming and climate change, we are seeing hotter and hotter seasons that we need to look at for either mitigation of those climate issues or other areas to grow it in that complement what we're doing, or other species of flax like hybridized seeds, which are grown to resist a little bit more drought than the current flax crop is. We look at waterless dyeing for our finishing process as the next evolution of the industry. And I think, Susan, you can give more statistics, but the textile industry is the industry it's the second largest user of water in manufacturing in the world. So textile production is quite water intensive, and it starts with growing textiles to finishing. Flax starts with a leg up because it takes no irrigation to grow the flax plants that the linen comes from. So it's a really sustainable product. We have to take a look what climate change is doing to those factors, and also keep an eye on ensuring we are communicating the authenticity of our product, because it does mean that we are getting it in places that are not using pesticides in the growing conditions. We are using top quality, non-toxic, no heavy metals, no azo dyes when we are doing finishing. And that's a really key component to any textile choice that you as a designer might opt for. Ask questions if you don't know, look for the certifications, look for other things that we can get into, but those kinds of programs will give you an immediate flag that it's a good choice to make in the sustainability field.
Yeah, you've mentioned some really key certifications and all there. Thank you. Thank you.
Trying to get it all in at one time,
Yeah.
but there's a lot to absorb at once.
There is a lot, and so people will be asking us questions, I know. And Steve, as a retailer, your supply chain is not on just one material. Rather, the furniture in your stores might be covered with linen, might be covered with leather, might be covered with something else, and it might not have any textile, it might be just wood. I want you to specifically talk about wood and your wood supply chain. Y'all have a huge commitment to ensuring that you are not inadvertently contributing to deforestation. And you score very high on our wood furniture scorecard, which favors certifications that demonstrate that, and also favors the use of reclaimed wood. And that's what the pictures, or some of the pictures we've been showing, indicate your commitment to leadership in that area of using reclaimed wood and wood in coming down in cities.
And maybe one of the biggest challenges that retailers face is the shortening of that supply chain. We work really hard to vet out proper manufacturers. We've had manufacturers that we've worked with almost as long as I've worked at Room and Board, 30 plus years now. A lot of those manufacturers are located up in the Midwest or the Northeast part of the country and near to our distribution, so that we can control the amount of miles that is put on the product before it gets into our distribution channels. We also work with manufacturers on yields of materials to try to make sure that as much of that material is used, so we don't have to try to figure out what to do with the offal, the leftover product that's out there. But specifically to talk to the reclaimed material, as well as a new landscape out there, which is called urban wood, which is wood that is fresh cut from communities, cities, municipalities, that is being taken down either for disease, from storms, for development. But a lot of that material goes into landfill at this point, and we're trying to divert that material from the landfill and using it in our products. And it's kind of a new frontier, if you will, in furniture to really be using this. And a lot of the supply chains need a lot of work to get it to be functional. And we're experiencing that right now with some of the people we're using. But to give you an example, and if you look at the slides, there's some images from our Baltimore project where we're, in helping them take down row homes in Baltimore and utilizing that material from those row homes in some of our products. So some of that material was first put into a home back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, from trees that were probably 100 years old at that point. So they're probably trees that were being grown in the 1600s, 1700s, and now going into a piece of furniture. So that length of time that material has been, carbon sequestered is all what it's all about. This image that is on the screen right now, where you see some of those trees, those are trees that were from Baltimore that were taken down for whatever purpose, disease, storm, development. And now we're using it by cutting it into slabs, as you see there, or even dimensional lumber to use in some of our products. So this isn't necessarily reclaimed the same way you think of a reclaimed board from a building, but it's being reclaimed in that it's not going to landfill, it's not being chopped up to mulch, and it's being put into, you know, a higher value use by putting it into furniture. I'm proud to say that recently we learned of Taylor Guitars, which is located out in California. They're using a specific material that they found to resonate really well for music, and have created a guitar made completely from urban wood that they're marketing and having a great success with it. So this is a movement that's starting to happen. We're going to find more and more people involved. We're hoping we get more involved because obviously, you know, volumes and getting those supply chains working more effectively is what's going to help it become more affordable. But it's really coming on, and maybe Jim can speak to it. But one of the early things we did was out of Detroit. We have what we call our Elliott Bowls, which are bowls made from trees that were cut down in the Detroit area, sent to Holland Bowl Works, which is in Holland, Michigan, and made into bowls. And they've been very popular. It's got a great story. They're gorgeous, and they're at a really good price point for that matter too. So, and maybe lead that into Jim as well as let him talk a little bit more about just that whole urban wood, reclaimed wood, what the customers respond to.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear is what do those customers say?
Well, I will say that for us, it starts with the education piece. You know, all of the great things that we've just heard about, it's our job to get that to the consumer so that they understand what it is that they're purchasing, what they're looking at. And we've seen a real shift over the last several years, particularly amongst the younger demographics, that they want to know these things. They're willing to, you know, pay a premium. They're willing to do that extra for that one piece that they understand where it came from. They're proud of it. They can share that with their friends, their family. And, you know, when it comes to the Urban Wood Project, being able to tell that story about, you know, this wood coming out of a row home and what that means to the community of Baltimore, it's that kind of globalization of it, of I'm helping out from Portland to the revitalization of this particular community. And so that's really, you know, that's the biggest due for us is that education piece. And as I mentioned in the beginning, consumers want to hear those stories. They care. And it's definitely something that didn't exist 15, 20 years ago, but it's incredibly important now. And, you know, beyond that, I'll leave it at that. I mean, that's where the consumer's at right now, for sure.
Yeah. It is clearly an urgent issue now. We have just learned in a report in the last few days that despite the fact that with COVID-19, a lot of manufacturing and other activity has slowed way down, despite that, CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere are higher now than they have been in all humanity's existence. They're higher than it's been in 3 million years, we believe. And so it is an urgent issue. And part of what is causing that strong concentration right now in the month of May 2020 is the month that we were reading reports on, is a lot of deforestation. So we all know that keeping our forests healthy and reforesting is the most efficient way to address the climate crisis. And the kind of policies that Room and Board has always implemented, and especially this innovative use of urban woods, is just a really, really exciting way to, in my mind, to make sure that you're not contributing to deforestation. And one of the things I want you to say another sentence or two about, Steve, is urban woods is dimensional lumber. In the pictures we see that whether it is a tree that has come down or whether it's a board that's come out of a house, it's being sawn into nice regular boards, which means it could be made into something that did not show it was a reclaimed board.
Right. A lot of what reclaimed boards have been all about was that character. You think of the barn boards and the factory boards that come out of the factories that are being redone. People are looking for that character of that old wood. It might be the width of the boards that you can't get anymore. It might be the character you get from nail holes and mineral markings and other things. Those are all important. But when you start to get into dimensional lumber, a lot of that character does end up going away to some degree. And now it just becomes a different place to go get your 2x6s and your 2x4s to manufacture things. A lot of what urban wood has been going into so far has been laminated panels for the construction industry for homes and buildings that they can use that panel because the trees themselves were very different back then. They were slower growing, which made for a stronger tree, which when you laminate those boards together creates a stronger beam than you would have out of new material, which is kind of interesting to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing I'd like to mention is that from a certification standpoint, this is so new that SFI has put it into their protocol to start talking about certifying urban material. They're much closer to it, so SFI will probably have a certification prior to anyone else. FSC hasn't recognized urban wood as something they want to certify yet. We're hoping we're going to get there. We're working with the Urban Wood Network and Katie Fernholz, and I know Susan knows Katie very well, with Dovetail Partners to get FSC to talk about a standard that would be able to certify urban wood. So that's coming. At this point, there's what's known as the Urban Wood Network that's trying to do what they can to educate the consumer to help bring it out in the open. And of course, things that we're doing to bring it out in the open as well. And this is what's interesting is if you think of any community in this country, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, every one of them has this problem. There is probably more wood available that is not being utilized properly coming out of urban sources than there are in all of the forests combined in all of the US. So this is a huge problem and it needs to be addressed, and it's going to go a long way to solving the carbon issue. The other problem is we can't lose sight of the fact that there are sustainable forestry, managed forest things happening that are in those places that are in the rural areas that also has to be managed through this. We can't just make everything urban wood and give up sustainable forestry. We have to balance and figure out what works for everything.
Yeah, it's going to take all of it. Yeah, yeah. And I am often aware of the fact that in our world, what we throw away is become our most abundant natural resource. And Beverly, I'm going to give you a chance to say a little bit more about what we've touched on before, that leather is something that would otherwise be thrown away. And many of us associate cattle production or cattle farming with deforestation, and rightly so. But those cattle, when they are slaughtered and their hide is taken off, something is going to happen with that. So I have heard you say, Beverly, be vegan and wear leather.
Yeah, for the people who are really concerned about the animal, and I will say, I've been an animal rights activist since I could, write when I was a child. So I get it. I never would have thought, I probably too had the incorrect view upon leather. And so that's why I'm here to say, as long as you understand that the industries are separate, right? The meat industry, if we would all quit eating meat, the leather industry would go away. That unfortunately isn't happening. It seems that in the US, there has been a slight reduction, but in all the other countries, it's increased, the amounts that people are eating, and the dairy industry as well. So to do anything other than utilize a waste product to divert it from the landfill, to do anything other than that, whether it's leather or plastic or whatever it is, you are making the decision to invest in a new process, a new procedure, more chemicals, more, something else. To take a natural product that's a byproduct and use it. And it can be used and reused and outlast the alternatives. So then you're talking about multiple lifetimes of this one product versus multiple products down the road. It's a smart decision. It's good for the environment. It's good for everything, right? So if your concern is for the animal, don't eat the meat, but buy the leather. So yes, that is exactly what I've said.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Now, Kathryn, on the subject of use and reuse, I want to give you a chance to talk about washability. And I want to, this invitation is because of a couple of things. We are all very concerned about washing, as we should be. And some in our industry are concerned about applying chemicals to textiles. We know well that COVID-19, or the virus that causes that disease, is washed away with soap and water. Linen is washable, and one of the pictures we've seen is of a linen slipcover on a room and board sofa. So I'd like you to talk about the many, many benefits of washability and how that extends use.
Absolutely. And I do think it's important to qualify that good linen is washable. Not all linen is washable, because you do have the experience, I'm sure all of us have, of the linen that you buy in apparel, which tends to come from Asia. It's grown and or woven and spun in Asian countries and then produced at a quite significant cost reduction so that they can put out less expensive, really, really inexpensive clothing. And those goods tend to have a lot of, I call them corners cut for cost savings, which means you can't always wash them. They shrink, and that shrinkage is permanent, or that they will cause holes just from washing because they're using lesser quality flax that does tend to fall apart. So we really have to know what kind of product you're sourcing or using right from the beginning, and go with the manufacturer's recommendations of washability, because you do have sewing processing involved in that as well. But in general, good linen is absolutely washable, and it in fact lends a patina, which Steve highlighted with the wood and all the other materials, and certainly as a part of leather. Patina is so important as a product ages and lasts. It becomes stronger with washing, actually, linen. And it's because the fibers shrink up together and become tighter as a weave. So we want you to wash it. We want you to dry it. It's the easiest process to manage, just soap and water washing. You certainly shouldn't throw a whole slipcover into your residential machine. However, you can spot clean. Recommendations generally are medium heat, medium drying. Do not rub, never any bleach, which we shouldn't be using anyway because it's a toxic product. And generally, it will take care of any issues you have. If you have stains that are a little bit more stubborn, you might have to soak it for a little while. I use salt or baking soda to pull the stain out. If it's an oil-based stain, it will, like putting your cell phone in rice, if you've dropped it in water, it'll pull that moisture out for you, and then you can wash it in soap and water like you would with your regular laundry. And if it is something that is larger, take it to a professional cleaner who uses, again, non-toxic cleaners, and you should be fine. But there's so much talk about cleanability now because I think, Susan, not only COVID, obviously, but people are seeing so much more about performance textiles. And for us as a company, and for me as a sustainability advocate, it's the worst thing you could possibly do. Personally, I would never have anything in my home with a performance finish that I could just get from using a natural product and taking a little extra time to potentially wash it if I do get it dirty. And I know that maybe is a little more angst causing with customers who have kids and dogs or messy partners like I do. But we need to make choices in our life. And I think that it is a value to know that you are putting something in your home that is healthy, that will not cause any issues for you down the road. And the trade-off is the cost of your long-term health and the well-being of your family versus the cost of that application on your furniture. So
Yeah.
I see that more as a question now, though, personally, is this safe for my home? And I think the What's It Made Of campaign that SFC has really addresses that and helps identify those chemicals. Antibacterial, antimicrobial, they're all really new applications, and some of it's early science. So I think we have to wait and see what's happening with that evolution. Use trusted vendors who are using non-toxic formulations for their performance fabrics, or performance fabrics that are made and the intrinsic nature of the textile is not a chemical additive.
Good, good. Thank you.
Or just use linen for everything.
That's a good solution too. Now, I have more questions, but I do see time is flying. So I'm going to go to the questions that our audience has asked. And then we'll see where those take us. So first question, are the extracts from the olive leaf used only for leather, or that can they be used in fabric as well? The properties of them that make them appropriate for leather are those tannins, and there might be, I don't know of olive leaves being used for dyeing. Do you, Beverly?
They're not really used for dyeing. They're used for the tanning of leather. And initially they thought, oh, you know, the people who created the wet green tanning method thought that they could use them for beauty products. So, you know, they were just looking for some way to utilize that byproduct, the fallen leaves, rather than burning them into the atmosphere. And what came of it was this new chemistry for tanning leather. So it doesn't mean that there might not be another use for those leaves, but for this, it's for tanning leather.
Yeah. I know that there, I can't remember its name, but I did learn about a leaf in Bolivia that's used for leather tanning and is used for dyeing, but I think it's incidental that it has those two different uses. The next question is for Room and Board. Does Room and Board offer furniture fabrics that carry Architects, GOTS, or cradle-to-cradle certifications? Are any of those certifications on any of the fabrics on any of your furniture?
I know a lot of our bed linen fabrics are Ecotec certified. I know some of our mattress tickings are Ecotec certified. I'm not as familiar with the upholstery fabrics, so I'm not sure about that, if any of them are. I do know that we've moved away from anything that would be listed as performance fabrics. We don't use any type of topical things such as this, you know, what would be commonly known as a Scotchgard type protectant. Well, it's not Scotchgard anymore. We've been a real proponent of taking the chemicals out of all of the furniture, including the foams that are out there. I know Susan and I are on a group that's trying to work on that right now in a bigger way. So to us, it's important that we're using as much as we can that's more sustainable. We do have fabrics that are taking some of the plastics out of the ocean and made into fabrics and recycling that. That's one of the things we are doing.
Cool.
But it is specific to Ecotex and GOT. I'm not sure about the upholstery fabrics being there.
Okay.
I don't know if Jim knows any more.
No, I'm not aware of any of them on the upholstery side.
Well, let me give you a follow-up question, Jim, that has come from one of our one in our audience. What percentage would you say of consumers are coming into the stores and specifically beginning conversations about sustainable furniture? Are you keeping track of how many people you're having those conversations with? And is there any particular material those conversations are around, wood or linen or leather?
I don't know that I have an exact percentage, and I can tell you that in Portland, it's much higher than anywhere else that I've lived. Here in the Pacific Northwest, people are much more dialed into it. And we've also seen the level of knowledge, via internet, whatever the case may be, that people have when they walk in. It sometimes feels like a test a little bit to see if you know what you're talking about, because they've already got the answer. I think more than anything, the questions we get come from where's the item from? They just want to know the general story behind it. And with room and board, with the vast majority of our product coming from the United States, over 90% of our product coming from the U.S., it's an easy story for us to tell. But they really want to know the origin more than anything, and I think that tends to answer a lot of their other questions. When you're talking about a solid walnut product, there's not a lot to really be questioned there.
Well, here's a question about a material in a room and board product. This is from an eco designer from Toronto. Could you tell me what the cushions on your room and board cushions are made from? What is the cushioning?
Jim, do you want me to tackle that one?
Yeah.
The cushions are a combination of polyurethane foam that is non-toxic. There is, depending on the product, because not all products are the same, there's also feather and down fill surrounding them, and then some ticking that encases that. There are some that do have what some people know of as Marshall units or springs that are in some, but most of them are all combinations of polyurethane foam and feather down cushioning surrounding that.
Great.
More to add to that?
No,
that's the vast majority of it for sure.
Yeah, good. And do you, all of you can answer this question. Many in our audience, of course, are designers. Do you have many designers requesting your products for their eco attributes? So each of you, Kathryn, you start.
I'll jump. Sure. And like I said before, most of the questions start with a discussion about how is it safe or is it safe? And that tends to drive the inquiry where I get them. And I do have to say, of course, we're using certifications that show that we're using non-toxic dyestuffs. We don't use chemical bleach, no chlorine-based bleaches. We have the GOTS certification program that I talked about earlier, where we partnered specifically with farmers to grow GOTS certified flax that we do source for that program, and that's expanding every year. Our goal is to hopefully make that the extent of our entire collection, but it is somewhat driven by demand, and you guys all just have to keep asking for more so that we can continue to push that forward. And again, it's do you have formaldehyde? Do you have the antimicrobials? Do you have all of these additives and performance-based fabrics that we're hearing about? And I can say no. Flax is naturally antimicrobial, so we don't have to add anything. And the chemicals that we are using in the dye stuffs are Ecotech certified, so they're non-toxic to humans, and they are certified, so it's a third party you can verify. Those are really important questions, and those are coming from consumers because, or designers, because of their consumer clients and because of a greater awareness out there of these issues.
Yeah. Good. And do the others have anything to add on your work with designers? Here is one for you, Steve, on, let me see, Steve, Steve, are you? Yeah, you are audible, good. But Steve, here's a question for you. Is there communication between material sourcing and the product designers to better utilize that material in products? since you're vendor resource manager, I guess that itself is right much of your job, is it?
Yes, I mean, when we have people join our team that come from the design background, probably the most interesting conversation we have is to talk to them about that partnership we have with our vendors and the manufacturing piece that they play an integral part in making the product. To give an example is we'll change the dimensions of a product to make sure that we're utilizing the yield of a piece of wood to the greatest extent possible. So if the design constraint is that it has to be a certain size, we're going to come back and say, but that's not giving us the right yields. We need to change that in order to really make full use of that material. There's times when you do have to take in dimensions for, clearances or kind of that, you don't want a dining table that's 36 inches high because no one would buy it, it's too tall. So you do have some constraints surrounding how the products are used. But in general, we like to work with our manufacturers to help us utilize that material the best we can, whether it's wood, whether it's fabric, whatever. We'll change the size of a sofa to make sure that we utilize that material as best we can too.
Cool, cool. Here is a question for Beverly. The question is, what % of your total production is being done by these more responsible European tanneries? Well, I think, Beverly, that you said that all your tanneries are REACH compliant. So perhaps you'll explain REACH compliance for us.
So most of our tanneries are from Europe, but not all, depending on the product that they make. I will say that.
Okay.
But all of our tanneries are responsible tanneries. We make sure that we partner with only the most responsible partners wherever they are located. The majority of of the folks we work with are in Europe, and for European tanneries, REACH is, you can Google that so that I don't spend too much time talking about what that is, but it's all regarding the chemicals used in your product and being completely transparent about those products, and then they're checked against hazardous materials, basically. So worst in class types of a product there. So we are working with tanneries who are, I would say, as far as the percentage of our business, it's the majority of I couldn't give you an exact percentage without doing the math, but I would say the majority, if not all, of our products are extremely responsible when it comes to the chemical makeup.
Good. And Steve, you also have familiarity with REACH compliance, and I think that you have said that is a protocol that you look for in conversations with vendors.
Susan, I have to honestly say I haven't been that exposed to REACH compliance, so
okay, good.
It's been one that we've had a lot of conversations surrounding at this point.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, here's another question. As a designer, how can I find specific items made from wood from Baltimore on the Room and Board website, or items made from wood from Detroit and other places in Michigan? I know you can do a search for reclaimed on your site. What other keywords would one use?
All of the products that are from the Baltimore Wood Project can be searched off of Baltimore Wood Project. There's a number of pieces from the McKean collection, and Jim probably knows the names better than I do. So I don't know if you want to add in the different collections that are out there.
McKean is the primary one. If you search McKean, you'll get most of them.
Yep. And the Detroit bowls will come up under Detroit. Trying to remember exactly what it is, but if you typed in Detroit in the search box, it would probably bring up those bowls. We're also working with a number of other communities. We've got product now coming in from Sacramento, California, where we're bringing in some redwood and some English walnut that they have that hasn't hit the website yet, but is coming. We're also working with West Coast Arborists out in California on some products. We're working with a company in Wisconsin on some Wisconsin urban wood coming out of Milwaukee. We're working with a company in Minnesota, which I love the name. It's called Wood from the Hood, that utilizes wood that's coming out of buildings as well as urban material coming out of the city of Minneapolis. And what's fun about some of this is each of them is so keyed into where this product is coming from that they are RF tagging everything to the point where they can tell you what city block a tree came from. And in some cases, they've been taking down trees and then repurposing into a piece for that homeowner where the piece came down from, so that the homeowner has that stays with it. But in some cases, we'll be able to tell people it came out of a certain area in the city of Sacramento. And so for anybody who knows, the area, it might have some meaning to them.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. And a great glimpse at what's coming. I love hearing that. We're just about out of time, y'all. In fact, we are out of time. It has gone past 4 o'clock. But I wonder whether Kathryn or Beverly or Jim, whether any of the others of you have a final word to say or a glimpse at what's coming to share with us. You're all part of the solution. Go ahead.
In general, I think the stories that you're interested in the audience and what you're asking about are what helps make the product valuable. And Susan, you mentioned forestation is the largest cause now of the CO2 emissions that we're seeing despite manufacturing being down. And that's because the value of the Amazon forest, as an example, isn't being communicated. And so your interest in these products as designers or as consumers, and you're asking us about these stories, asking when you're going into the showrooms and the stores, and getting your clients to know where their products came from and the stories behind it, makes that investment that we are all making as manufacturers and retailers of these products important. We will continue to make them and we will continue to expand them if there is the interest. So it is very much a partnership that we look to you to help support. It's not that we're doing it necessarily. I think Steve can also say from the get-go, our companies made the investment because we all felt like it was the right thing to do, not because there was this huge clamoring demand for sustainable products. It was, we built it and then hopefully now people are coming. And I think we're seeing that interest coming and we're very gratified to see it, but come on, let's go, do more. Let's do more.
Yeah.
And I will echo that sentiment, and that, as I've said several times, people want to know these things. And so we're all educating people on these. You know, I'm here in Portland. Please, if you're in the city, come in. I'll be happy to tell you about it because, you know, Room and Board has an amazing story to share. And there is tremendous value in that, and consumers want to know.
Yeah.
I would also have to echo as well in that, you know, the stories are great. Everyone loves the story. What I've seen with a lot of my clients as designers is that they're waiting for the end user to ask for it. So my plea to all of you as designers is don't wait for them to ask you for it. Start the conversation, because it is the story that is so engaging, but ultimately there will be no story if there isn't action taken and purchase made. So, you know, and if we start seeing an increase in all of this interest in purchasing and people using these products, it will only get better. You know, things will only improve. We're at the early stages of a lot of this, so there are great things to come. Oh, and I would also like to say quickly, our Oregon, for those of you in Oregon, our Oregon representative would love to hear from you, as would I. And her name is Amy Frick with ATF Designs.
Good. Thank you. Thank you all for being part of this conversation. I really, really appreciate your being panelists for us. Steve and Jim and Kathryn and Beverly, thank you. Thank you, ASID Oregon, for hosting this and for coming for the conversation. I know there were more questions. The panelists will receive the questions and can respond to you individually that way. So let us know when you want to know anything else. We look forward to continuing conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.